All right. So, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. I gotta say, that was a lot more fun than I expected. It's very different. It's very different than than every other Legend of Zelda game, but it's a lot of fun. I was very surprised at how entertaining it was. So, Megan, thoughts?
I think if I were to compare the two, I like the original Legend of Zelda a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But I do also feel like this was a lot more entertaining than I was expecting, because at first I was like, wow, it's so different compared to the original Legend of Zelda. But I really like the level up aspect to this game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's really cool. And I also really like the dungeons. I think that they are reminiscent of a lot of the current dungeons in more modern games.
Yeah, I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm very much on the same thing. Yeah, I agree. I think if I was to play one of the two, I'd probably play the original.
Yeah.
Saying if I hadn't already finished it, for me personally, this is not like just on a personal, because I have finished the original one. I only be more likely to go to this one just because I haven't finished it, and honestly, see, it's reasonably challenging. One of our commenters were saying earlier, it's not impossible, especially since it saves more progress than OG Zelda does. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you do have to, like, if you lose all 3 lives and have to start over, you do start from the center palace and have to go back to whatever dungeon you were. That's, of course, that sucks. But otherwise, you keep all your XP. You keep all the key progress you made in that dungeon, which I didn't even expect that. I thought you'd have to do all that over again. But no, that stays. It's very lenient in that regard. And on that note, like, I think, yeah, if you're going through this game, again, like the original, Legend of Zelda, it has a special version, so you have an easier way to beat the game if it's like really hard for you. Only thing that sucks about it is because all your spells are maxed out, so you really will gain nothing from doing like level ups or anything like that. So that's one aspect of the game that's kind of taken from you. But if you're like really struggling with this one, then that maybe would go if you're trying to like just finish the game, basically. But otherwise, yeah, it is a lot more fun than I expected. Like, I was like, I finished the original Legend of Zelda because I figured I could learn the most of it, Legends history wise. But this one, a lot more fun than I expected, and it will probably encourage me at some point to probably finish it at some point, because there's more taken from this game than I thought there was, and there's also more to it than I think. Legend of Zelda games have certainly not taken not a lot from this game, but there's a lot of other games that have actually taken a lot from Zelda 2. There was this Adventure Time game they made for the 3DS that was like heavily based on Zelda 2 that I remember. And so there's like other games like this, other indie games that I think really took inspiration from this, since this formula more or less got abandoned for the most part. Jarrell says the first one looked the best though, play wise at least. I agree, and yeah, it really is the most fun play wise. Like, that's a formula that really has endured over the years, which is why they continued from that one as opposed to Zelda 2. Like, Zelda 2, like, it has potential, and I think a lot of independent developers have taken that potential and gone with it. But they definitely expanded from the original Legend of Zelda more so, and went forward with that. And I think that was for the best. I think the Legend of Zelda series is as special as it is because they went that direction, and I'm very happy they did. So, yeah, a lot more fun than I was expecting. A lot of cool stuff. I like the spells. If you're a Legend of Zelda enthusiast, it's definitely more important. I would say it's more important to play the original, or just look at it, whatever. If you're that curious, than it is Zelda 2. But I would say still try, if you're a big Legend of Zelda fan, try Zelda 2, because it might surprise you with actually how fun it can end up being. Now, last question before we conclude: do we think it holds up, the game? And this one is probably easier to I think evaluate between the two, because again, it is very different from Legend of Zelda games, traditional Legend of Zelda games, I should say. So it's easier, at least to me, to factor it as a standalone game than it would be a Legend of Zelda game, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I guess I'll go this time. I'll go first with Zelda 2. again, a lot of indie games do take from this. It's a formula. Like the Zelda series could have gone one of two ways: the Legend of Zelda one way and the Zelda 2 way, and they went the Zelda 1 way, and they took that potential from Zelda 1 and expanded upon it and made a wonderful series. I feel like if Zelda 2 had become its own separate series, it could have blossomed in very much in the same way and become really great. And again, independent developers have really done that more than Nintendo has. And those games are great. And they owe that to Zelda, The Adventure of Link, with its RPG system and side-scrolling elements that's way different than the Legend of Zelda game. So you know what? For being a more unique game, I'd be more willing to play original Legend of Zelda because it's more what I know, what I like. But for the sake of being more a unique game, I actually honestly think Zelda 2 holds up a little better in that regard because there's not much else that Nintendo makes that's like it. It's very unique. Whereas Legend of Zelda has just got more polished over the years. That's my take, but what do you think?
I think that The Legend of Zelda, the original, I actually disagree a little bit, and I think that the original holds up a little bit more.
Okay. Are you still there?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought you were... Okay.
Yeah. No, my mic was being weird. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed The Adventure of Link, but I don't know if I would be as inclined to play it again as I would the original Legend of Zelda.
Right.
I think it's a very similar case to you, where the original Legend of Zelda has a lot more aspects to it that I find appealing. And, you know, it really has a lot of similarities to the games that are currently being made for The Legend of Zelda. And so sure. I definitely find myself more inclined to replay the original game. But I do think that overall, The Adventure of Link still holds up, just not as well.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair statement. And thinking about it now, I guess the last thought I'll throw out about it is now that I do think about it a little more, obviously I reiterate again, they took a lot more from the original Zelda going forward. But there is a lot that they did take from Zelda 2 going forward. We talked about this, like towns, and magic did get used. Magic hasn't been used as often in modern Zelda games, but it did come from this game because the original Legend of Zelda did not have a magic meter. This game did.
Right.
It had...
sorry.
Yeah, you're good, you're good.
I do really like the spells and the magic aspect to it. I think that that's a really cool aspect that they added into The Adventure of Link. I think that definitely makes the game more unique, especially compared to the original.
For sure.
And I think that, like you said, aspects of that have been trickling into modern Zelda games. And it's not as prevalent, but it's still, you know, when you play The Adventure of Link, you kind of think of some of the modern games and you think of some of the magical aspects, and it's really cool to be able to kind of put that timeline together, like, oh, this is where it originated from.
Exactly. And that was my main thing why I like going through the original so much, even though it's not as polished, because it does have those aspects. Zelda 2 doesn't really have that as much, but it has some. And it is cool to see it when it does pop up. I feel like Smash Bros. Took more from this game than Zelda did, but that's another story. But But the swordplay in Zelda 2, I don't think is like completely Smash only. Like I think some Zelda games did take from the swordplay from this game, like Skyward Sword, for example, where like this game was all about certain enemies you have to hit them low or you have to hit them high. Like the Dark Knight, for example, you have to like constantly be switching between them. Skyward Sword took that because that game was all about like finding the opponent's weaknesses by moving the sword around with your Wii remote and like finding the weakness and slashing them right there. So yeah. And then games like Breath of the Wild took some aspects of that as well, with its swordplay as well.
Mm-hmm.
Its stuff did get taken from there, just like not the general gameplay. Like it was a very different game, but it did have elements that ended up boosting the core game's formula, and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I thought that both games were really great. It's been a long time since I played either of them, and when I did play either of them, I only played a small amount.
Yeah.
So it didn't really stand out in my mind. I couldn't really remember all the aspects to it, but replaying them today, has definitely, especially analyzing it too, has definitely made it stand out more in my mind, and being able to make the connections that I can make now with Breath of the Wild and Skyward Sword, Twilight Princess, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, thinking about those games and connecting them to the origins, is really, really cool. And I think that makes these games even more precious to me because I'm able to look at these games and be like, okay, this is where it all started. And I think that's really, really cool. And, I think that's what makes these games stand up still for me. And, I still think that they're very original and interesting games that I would play again.
Agreed. 100%. And that's also one of the reasons why I love doing this series so much, because like you said, you take these games that you had a general fondness for, but then analyzing them, like taking time to play them and have fun, obviously, but to also understand like what the games were, how they were back then, and thinking about them now. Thinking about like more of a critical eye. It gives these games a new light. Sometimes it makes me end up liking games more than I thought I would. And sometimes it makes me disliking them more. Actually, that's the only example of that is that Wrecking Crew game. Like that Wrecking Crew, it kind of bummed me. I'm not gonna lie. I really thought because I had played a little bit of this game before I did that episode, and I thought, wow, this is a cool concept. I think if I took some more time with this, I'm sure I'd love this game. I didn't. Aww. And that surprised me. Meanwhile, in that same episode, myself and Gabe played this game, NES Open Tournament Golf, which is a game I thought I was not going to enjoy, and we ended up having a blast with that episode. So you never know what's going to happen until you like really give it a chance, and that's one of my favorite things about this series. And yeah, well, on that note, this series is most definitely going to continue, people, because we have a lot more games to go through in this collection, as you can see. Megan in particular, this is going to be quite a while from now, but Megan for sure is going to come back with me in an episode where we're going to be playing through Rygar and the Immortal. So that would be a lot. So that would be a lot of fun when we eventually get around to
it. Excited.
And who knows? Maybe Megan will come before. Yeah, Gabe said that game kicked my ass. It kicked my ass too. It did.
Yeah, it does that.
Oh, man.